Hey there, I'm Alicia. Welcome back to my channel. As you know, there is a reading project that I'm currently in the middle of, and it's the Reading Latin American Authors Reading Project. If you want to learn more about it, I will go ahead and link the announcement video down below, so make sure to check it out. So for today's video, I'm actually going to be giving you book recommendations for authors from Argentina. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. Before we get into the recommendations, I do want to make you aware that I have created a spreadsheet that will also be linked down in the description box, and moving forward it will be linked in my description box for every single video. And this is just going to be a running spreadsheet of authors from different Latin American countries. It's pretty much bare bones at this point in time. There's a lot of Mexican authors and a lot of Argentinian authors, and that's about it, but I hope to keep building it slowly so that we can all use it as a reference guide and find new Latin American authors to read from each specific country. So please do go ahead and check it out, and if you don't see an author on there that you know of, please leave it in the comments down below and I will make sure to add it. So with that, let's get into the recommendations. So I actually want to start off with the book that I will be reading this February for the Latin American Reading Project, and that is Galba Imperial by Angelica Gorodischer. This is translated by Ursula Guin. What really stood out to me about this book is that it's been compared to the storytelling of Salman Rushdie, and I just also haven't read any adult fantasy from Argentina. As you will see from the rest of the video, I mostly dabble in sci-fi, speculative fiction, and horror, with the exception of one young adult fantasy that we will talk about. So I'm just really excited to read an adult fantasy from an Argentinian author and see what I think about it. Moving on to the next book that I actually own, this is going to be Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica, and this was translated by Sarah Moses. Now, Tender is the Flesh is a horror dystopian novel, and it is set in a world like ours in the near future where humans are unable to eat meat anymore because it's making us sick. And so due to this, we start consuming human flesh. The government started a series of projects where we breed humans for consumption, and we even use all the special terminology to make sure that we distance ourselves from their humanity by calling it special meat. In this one in particular, we're following our main character, Marcos, who works at one of these processing plants. He's going through a lot. His father, I believe, has Alzheimer's, or he's just really sick, and his wife recently divorced him. And we learn about this world from his perspective, and we also follow him as he does this job day in and day out, how he quite doesn't really enjoy his job, but he does it because it's the normal thing to do in this world. So I would pick this book up if you like dystopian fiction, but also if you don't mind body horror. There are some descriptions in here of mutilation and violence, and it is against humans because they are being bred for other humans to consume, so keep that in mind. I also want to point out that the writing style is very simple and straightforward. It's sort of even written in a very clinical way. I didn't know what to think about it when I first read it. I don't know if it's a book that I would ever reread, but it's one that definitely sparked a lot of questions in my mind. So yes, that is Tender is the Flesh. Now, staying within the horror genre, there are two separate short story collections. The first is Things We Lost in the Fire, and the second one is The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. Both of these are by Mariana Enriquez, and they were both translated by McDowell. Personally, I enjoyed Things We Lost in the Fire a lot more than I enjoyed The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. Although I can't really quite say that I enjoyed the reading experience of both of them. They're very gothic and macabre. I can never pronounce that word. Macabre. You know what I'm trying to say. And these short story collections have a very sharp edge. They're very blunt. They're unflinching and brutal and violent. So please do know that before going into them. There are tons of trigger warnings for both of them. Things We Lost in the Fire particularly exemplifies the complexities of the human condition. It talks about the ravages of poverty and addiction and those abusive cycles. It talks about femicide and about women in abusive relationships. And so again, I really want to point out that in these short story collections, the horror of it really comes from the cruelty of humans and the things that humans are capable about, dark thoughts and dark things, and not necessarily about something that's supernatural or something that is eerie or something that is scary. It's really just about the brutality of humans and the human condition. So if that sounds up your alley, these are some that I might check out. So moving on to something lighter, the next book on this list is Lobizona, and this is by Romina Garber. This is the only book on here that is not translated, and that's because Romina Garber was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, but she actually grew up in Miami. So she did write Lobizona in English, so it didn't need a translation into English. And so this is the first novel in a duology, I believe, called Wolves of No World, and this is young adult fantasy. Now, what I enjoyed the most about Lobizona is that it bleeds with care and uniqueness and creativity. Now, Lobizona was a book that once I picked up, I couldn't put it down. It was action-packed, it was fun, it kept me intrigued, and I really love the way that Romina Garber not only incorporated heavy topics and social issues that are very pertinent to the characters in the book and treated them with such nuance and care, but she equally made it an entertaining plot line so that the reader is engaged even though we are dealing with all of these heavy topics. And so to tell you what this book is about, we follow our main character Manu. Manu and her mom fled Argentina. They were running away from her father's crime family in Argentina, and so they immigrated to the United States and are living in secrecy. Manu's mom has a lot of restrictions on her. She's not really allowed to go out and explore during certain times of the day. She has to break classes because something weird is going on with her eyes. And so really Manu is feeling trapped. She feels like she can't be herself. She feels like she's always hiding, and she feels like she doesn't really know who she is because she doesn't know anything about her dad. And so things really start to take off when Manu's mom gets picked up by ICE and she doesn't really know where to go. So Manu starts to investigate and she wants to learn more about her father. And by doing so, she realizes that there's this magical world that she never knew existed and that she is a part of, a world filled with wolves and witches, a world where she might be able to finally fit in. And so this book really highlights identity and cultural heritage and finding yourself and appreciating your differences, which I really much enjoyed. It was a really fun, a very heartwarming read, and it was action-packed all the way through. I do want to point out though, as a young adult novel, that it did lean a little bit more towards the young adult side than the adult side, so I just wanted to point that out. So for my classic lovers on here, I got you. The next book on this list is The Tunnel by Ernesto Sabato. This is translated by Nino Pipia, and so Ernesto Sabato is one of the big authors from Latin America. He is very well known, very well respected, and I can see why. His writing is just spectacular. It's some of the best writing that I've read. Now, The Tunnel didn't quite specifically work for me the way I thought it was going to, and I think it just has to do with the subject matter. I didn't really know what I was going into before I started it. So this is told in first person, and we're following a painter. He's a little bit of a misanthrope and a little bit of a loner. A lot of the themes deal around existential alienism and around loneliness. There's themes of blindness all the way throughout. But at the core of this is obsession. Think sort of You by Carolyn Kepnes. Is that the name of the author? You know, You, like the Netflix series. This is sort of what this is about. And so we follow this painter who becomes obsessed with this woman. And so this entire time we're in his head and we're hearing his obsessive thoughts as he's thinking about her and stalking her and all of that good stuff. So yeah, I can see why Sabato is really highly regarded. Like I said, his writing was spectacular, and I'm definitely going to be reading more by him. It's just that this book didn't quite work for me because of the stalking and the obsession with women. You know, I just found that a little bit creepy and a little bit weird. So that is The Tunnel by Ernesto Sabato. Now, for those of you who like something that's a little bit slower, it's a little thoughtful and reflective, but still deals with really important themes, I have Eartheater by Dolores Reyes, and this is translated by Julia Sanches. And I would say that this sort of blurs the line between magical realism and speculative fiction. This one is also told in first person, and we're following an unnamed narrator whose mother has just passed away. At her mother's funeral, this unnamed narrator has this compulsion to eat dirt, and when she eats this dirt, she's able to have a vision and find out what happened to her mom and how she died. This book is so difficult to talk about because it deals with so many different elements. This is definitely a book that is extremely theme heavy, so if you like that, I would highly recommend. It was one of the best books that I read last year. At the center of it, it's really highlighting people who don't have a voice. So in that sense, it's giving a voice to the voiceless, those who go missing and no one cares about, so women who suffer from femicide, and family members who are never able to get any closure because police are often underfunded or they don't take the crime seriously and don't investigate. So we have this unnamed narrator who is equally shunned and admired. She's seen as a witch, but she also helps these families get closure by really finding out what happened to these missing people. So if that sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend it. Like I said, it was one of my favorite books of last year. Now, if you're someone that likes sci-fi, don't worry, I got you. I didn't forget about you. The next book on this list is also a mix between sci-fi and speculative fiction with like a dash of literary fiction. And this is Little Eyes by Samanta Schweblin. This was also translated by McDowell. I do believe in some areas this has been published as Kentuckies. So when you look it up, it's either going to be listed as Little Eyes or Kentuckies, but don't worry, I'll list all of these books down below. And so this was another one of those books that I wasn't quite sure how to feel about it when I read it, but I do find myself occasionally thinking back to it, to what it was trying to tell me. It's a book whose central themes revolve around connection and loneliness and even globalization and technology, but it's written in such a disparate way. We get stories from people all over the world and what their personal experiences with these Kentuckys. And so at the core of it, we're exploring technology. Think of like an Alexa but it's able to move, and instead of you being solely able to communicate with it, there's actually someone on the other end. So instead of an AI, it's another human being who dwells inside of this Kentucky, and it's able to like move around your house. You have no control over it. The dweller is the one who's able to control it, and you as the keeper, the person that has the Kentucky, you're not able to turn it off. Only the dweller can. And so this is a book that really keeps you at arm's length. There's really no character development because you are jumping from person to person and they're in different parts of the world. It's also generally plotless because it's really highlighting the experiences with the Kentuckys and really delving into the motivations as to why you would want to be a dweller and basically creep and invade other people's privacies, but also why you would want to be a keeper and have someone, you know, creep and invade on your privacy. So really interesting, but I don't think it's gonna be for everybody. So those are my recommendations for some authors from Argentina that I think you should check out. Like I mentioned, the spreadsheet will be linked in the description box. There are other authors on that list that I didn't talk about because I haven't read the books, so I can't really give you insights into them. So do check it out. And if you do have any recommendations, be sure to leave a comment and I can go ahead and update the spreadsheet. So that was it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.